because I told God that if this ever gets in the way of, my family and my marriage, then I'll assume that's not you and I'll quit that day. And
You are now in the presence of a...
Thanks for tuning in to the Reformationist Podcast, a place where we have tough conversations about ministry, biblical truth, and the things they never told you in Bible college. Grab a cup of coffee and enjoy the show.
Hey, thanks everybody for joining us on the Reformationist Podcast, another episode of Coffee with Pastors. Today, I have the greatest honor and greatest privilege to sit with somebody I've been a great fan of for probably close to 2 years now.
that's crazy.
Christian hip hop artist, pastor, motivational speaker. He's got a list. You go on Spotify and check him out. His name is LEGIN. I'd like to introduce him. LEGIN, go ahead and tell the people hello.
What's up, Pete? What's up, people? Man, thanks for having me, man. I appreciate you, bro. Yeah, I'm a father. I'm a husband. My wife and I just celebrated 18 years marriage. And my baby girl is going in the 9th grade. My son's going in the 6th. It's crazy, bro.
Wow.
Yeah, man. I've been in full-time ministry 10 years on my own independently as a speaker and a performer. Write music, songwriter. I'm in the entertainment industry. Felt like that's the way God wanted me to shape culture. And my home church in Norfolk, Virginia, where I serve, I live in Virginia Beach. I've been preaching there once a month for 10 years. I help serve there with vision and teaching. And then I travel around to, conferences, schools, prisons, churches, and do my best to share the gospel with music, message, and movement. So whatever I can do, whether it's speaking, performing, or both, I try to go and do all that. And God's been really faithful. So it's been a fun ride, bro. Fun ride.
Awesome. Hey, those of you that have been watching for a while, a little while back, maybe a month, 2 months, month and a half, I don't know the exact time, but I recorded an episode with Pastor Andy from the Rushmore Show, and we did a mini Rushmore as our icebreaker. And if you were watching and you remember, my number one, my top non-worship Christian artist was this gentleman right here. And full circle moment
crazy.
for me. I'm going to do my best to try and not geek out and fanboy and be like, oh. I'm usually never been that type of person. When I lived in New York for several years, I met a lot of celebrities and some celebrity chefs and some professional athletes. And I was never like, oh,
that's so weird, bro. I love it.
Quick funny story. One time, Jeremy Shockey, the tight end, was playing for the New York Giants. And I walked into a bar that he was at drinking, and I had my Jeremy Shockey jersey on. And I met Jeremy Shockey while wearing his jersey, and it was like, oh, wow, this is cool. And everybody around me was like, oh, my God, it's it. I'm like, he's a football player, guys. Like, hi, nice to meet you. Can I buy you a beer? Whatever. But
that's dope. That's really dope.
I've never been the type of like, oh, but this is one of those moments where I kind of deep down inside, I'm like, but man,
it's a privilege to be with you, bro. So thank you for that. You told me that story off camera, and I'm still tripping. Like, for real, that's dope.
Yeah. So we start things off with the icebreaker before we get into rules, before we get into conversation. I like to do a little icebreaker. I've done all kinds of different things, but my wife suggested to me one time to do like a testimony icebreaker. And I was like, man, that's a good idea, because when you're first starting out in ministry and you're learning how to talk to people and share your testimony with people and share Jesus with people, they teach you about the elevator speech. Something, anything from a 90-second to a 4 or 5 minute little, thing about you, about a testimony. And another thing I've learned about testimonies is we all have that testimony of how we came to Jesus originally, our salvation testimony, that one moment where we met Jesus, we met our Savior face to face. And that's such a beautiful thing. It's so important. But we also have to learn that there's testimonies that happen in our lives as we walk out our faith, as we walk out our ministry. I share, if you haven't had a recent testimony of something, then are you really fully trying to accomplish the mission that Jesus put us on the earth to do? Our life should be full of testimonies. So as the icebreaker, I'd like to say, hey, share a testimony, whatever you feel the Lord's leading you, whether it's part of what we're going to talk about today, or whether it's your call to salvation, like when you were called, when the Lord saved you, whatever testimony you want to share in a 3 to 5 minute window. I'm not going to time you, so you can take whatever time. I say 3 to 5 minute, but for a pastor, 5 minutes is like 30 minutes. But hey, whatever
Yeah,
time
bro.
you need.
Can't. One of the biggest lies in black church I had growing up was "I won't be before you long." That's how the pastor would start their message. We knew them. Like he just lied to start preaching. He's lied. Nah, man. For me, I'll keep it brief. I try to tell the story everywhere I can. Like my father was not around growing up. Drugs, alcohol, and my mother and he were married for 10 years prior. But around the time I came, he kind of slipped into some substances. And so after three failed rehab attempts over 5 years, my mother had to make this really difficult choice of, do I save my marriage or do I save my son? And she chose me to move back here to Virginia Beach where she was raised. And that's where I grew up for the next 15 years. My dad was in DC, 3.5 hours away. I didn't see him. And around 10 or 12, after a couple of broken promises, and one in particular of, I'm going to pick you up and make up for lost time and not showing up, I just kind of went down the path of like, well, F it, then. I don't really care about any of this stuff anymore. And
Mhm.
and eventually that led me to just trying to cover up my insecurity with worldly things and women and chasing money and hip hop. Music is beautiful, but some of the cultural influences and some of the themes weren't good for me. And those things caught up. And eventually I just kind of left church and didn't really care anymore about like Jesus or any of this stuff. Fast forward to 20, my father writes me a letter, says he needs to come apologize for what he's done. He comes down to Virginia Beach. We have dinner. He asks for forgiveness, and I tell him, I'll never forgive you for what you did to me, you know? And then 6 months later, after that, the lady in my office, my insurance office, says to me, I don't know what you're going through, but God told me to tell you, if you don't get that bitterness out of your heart, you'll never make it into the kingdom of heaven. And
Wow.
I'm like, all right, well, that was rude. So 3 months after that, I called him. We had a good conversation. I told him I forgave him and I loved him and I wanted to get to know who he was. And we were, we just had a great forgiveness convo, which I'll always treasure. And we hung up and we're talking about talking some more. And right after that phone call, he passed away.
Mm.
So that was our literal last conversation, was I forgive you.
Wow.
And the coming to Jesus story of it for me was, I wrestled with, all right, God obviously isn't there. Maybe I was right to leave church because there's no plan involved with it. Like there's no plan here. Or if God is there, he's mean,
Mm.
because why would you do that? Or God is there and he really cares about forgiveness. And that's where I landed. And there was a part of me that probably didn't have language for it, but like, man, I needed to forgive my dad, but I needed the father to forgive me.
Mm.
And I came to faith in Christ, and I've never looked back. It was just in my grandmother's basement by myself, no sermon, no song. But I said, if this is Jesus, this is who I need. And I gave my life to the Lord, and I've been running for him ever since.
Wow.
So
Wow. It's crazy how our relationship with our earthly father, um, man, it dictates a lot in our lives. I shared with you
facts.
prior to our show, I had a rough relationship with my father. Like he left he left the house when I was 2, left my mom with me and my 2 older
Mm.
brothers from her previous marriage. And in
I'm
and
sorry to
out,
hear that, bro.
in and out my whole life. I'd go and spend summers with them, and we had a form of a relationship, but I never had that role model. I never had that person to look up to. So I too
Mm.
went down a pretty crooked path. At 8 years old, I felt the calling on my life, and I grew up Catholic, so I felt the calling to be a priest. And then
Mm-hmm.
the next thing you know, like I'm 16, considering it, and the priest in my church was like cussing me out. What are you effing crazy? You want to throw your effing life away? That's because he was bitter.
Wow.
He was bitter in his calling for whatever reason, thinking that if so I was like, man, I'm 16. I'm, you know, teenager, hormonal, crazy. I like girls, so like my desire to want to get married or do all the things that marriage entailed, right?
Yeah, for sure.
led me down the path of not following my calling, because the only path I knew to my calling then was to go to seminary, be a Catholic priest, give up all the stuff that I wanted to do.
Yeah, for sure.
So I ran from it, and I got involved in criminal activity in my late teens, early 20s. Call myself a reformed gangster, like I was involved with some heavy hitters when I lived in New York. I'm not going to go all Michael Frances over here and be like, oh yeah, I was involved with this crime family and I was a made member. I couldn't be. I wasn't full blood, but I knew people and I associated with people and I did some stupid stuff and got involved in that. But man, like that relationship with my father years later, right before we had my son, and he was an infant, and I told my dad, hey, I'm not Catholic anymore. I'm a born again Christian. I go to this church. I think I'm going to follow the path to ministry that God laid out for me 20 something years ago. And he's like, oh, that's wrong. You're going to go to hell. You need to baptize your kids. They're going to go to hell, all that stuff. And there was a lot of bitterness there, and we didn't talk for a long time. And the Lord spoke to me one day and said, you need to write your father a letter. If you're not going to call him,
wow.
If he's not going to answer your phone calls, if you can't have the conversation, you need to write him a letter. I sent him a letter. He sent me a letter back. Several months later, I found out from a phone call that he had passed away.
Man, I'm sorry to hear that, bro.
So like, I laid everything out in that letter. I told him who I am, who God's called me to be, the whole thing. This is it. This is your son, and take it or leave it, kind of thing. I release you from all the obligation to anything you did, and I forgive you for everything that happened. And I'd like to have a relationship with you as men, but if we can't, then I'm okay with that too. I just need this for closure. So, and he wrote me a letter back. I understand. I accept that. Not saying I agree, but I accept it. And it was like, okay. But it, like you said, it was that moment the Lord ministered to me through that. Like I didn't want to.
It's good, bro.
I didn't want to, but I learned that that's more forgiveness than just saying, hey, I forgive you, like having that moment. But it's funny because before that, I had finished writing a book called Forgiving Judas. And the premise.
Oh, you wrote that before this situation?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. And it's like the premise of the book is simply forgiving Judas. Like, can you forgive Judas? Judas betrayed Jesus with washed feet. The foot washing was a cleansing. It was an act of forgiveness before, because Jesus knew what they were all going to do.
Wow.
And he forgave them before they did it.
Judas forgave Jesus with washed feet. Where can I buy that book?
It's on Amazon. I'll share it.
Buy it, bro.
I'll send you the link. It's a short book. It's maybe 115 pages. It doesn't take long to read.
No, text it to me because I got to write a book, and I was thinking I need to tap into a couple other forgiveness voices to get their perspectives when I write this book. I need you to send that to me because that line alone is powerful, bro. Jesus is powerful. Yeah. Send that to me.
I've got a bigger book I've been working on for years, and I got sidelined on it because of some craziness, but I'll share that with you another time. But it's called The Sons of Noah. Because I really think like this conversation we're having right now, unfortunately, and in the country we live in and the day we live in, this is a diverse conversation.
Right.
For one reason. And it shouldn't be, because we're all from the same man.
Thanks.
Regardless of what we look like, what we sound like, we all come from the same man. We're all brother. We're all truly brothers, not just, hey, brother. No, we are legitimately blood relation. All of us, all 8 billion of us on this earth. But it's a long book. I'll share it with you another time, but enough about that.
Sounds like a smart people book. I like it.
It really was. Quick side note on that. Where I went to Bible college, it's a full-scale university. So you have to take like English and science and math and all that, but they Christ-centered, which is really cool. So I took a biology class, and it was Christ-centered biology. And I wrote a term paper, and this lady was like, this is powerful. You need to write a book on this. And I'm like, I've already begun the book. And she's like, awesome. Let me know when you're done. But anyway, so real quick ground rules. They're easy. They're simple. They're really not rules. They're just boundaries, I guess, whatever you want to call them.
Sure.
Rule number one, cup of coffee. If you can see my coffee cup,
I
Southern
drunk
Roots
mine already.
Southern Roots Coffee. That's our little coffee sponsor, my friend
Oh,
Pastor
nice.
Bubba.
What's up, Pastor Bubba?
He's a good friend of mine. He's up in Alexandria, Louisiana. Really nice guy.
Sounds like it, bro. You can't be named Pastor Bubba and not be a great guy. So.
Right? Rule number two, this is your conversation. People are tuning in to hear what you have to say. I'll guide a little bit here and there and add, like I just add a little bit there. That'll probably be the most I talk this whole episode. But this conversation is about what you have to say. People are tuning in to hear you. You're the guest of honor, so be prepared to do most of the talking.
Okay.
Rule number three, while it's important to be authentic, we have to make sure we understand that regular lay people, as well as ministry people, as well as people stepping into ministry, as well as people outside of the church, are probably going to listen to this conversation.
Dope.
When we share stories or share testimonies, unless you know you have the permission of someone specific, I try and keep specifics out of it. So I don't like to bring up any names or any specific churches or details. Unless you know that the person you're talking about would be okay. Like if you name drop somebody and they're okay with it, I'm good with it. I just don't want us to be like, this one time sister so-and-so at this church in South Texas really made me mad, and I can't forgive her for it. And her name is
third row, 3 seats from the light, blue hat.
Right.
Like, yeah, I got it. I've got somebody in mind that I'm not going to gossip about. No, I'm joking.
and then the fourth rule: if a subject is too hard to talk about, then we table it and move on. We don't want to linger on something that's too hard to talk about. Even though we talk about forgiveness and unforgiveness, if it's too hard to talk about, it means there's probably some forgiveness that needs to go on there, or the Lord's telling us to let go of that person or deal with whatever we need to. But I
respect it.
We table it and move on if it's too difficult to talk about. All right.
Yes, sir.
With that being said, let's jump right in. First question for you. We talked a little bit about it before, but the path to ministry. What was your ultimate path to ministry? Where talk a little bit about where you went to Bible college or seminary, your credentials, your certifications, whatever, I got my credential certificate on the wall and my degree on the wall, your degree, whatever you want to talk about as far as your.
I've got mine on the wall too, right here.
Yeah. As far as your path to, preaching, ministry, teaching, talking, just share a little bit about that and what you feel the Lord's called you to specifically.
Sure, man. So after everything happened with my dad, my wife, we had been kind of like inching our way towards getting some things together. She's my girlfriend at the time. We ended up, coming to Christ, and then she dragged me to a Christian hip hop show. And I said, a Christian what? That sounds so stupid. I don't want to go to that. And it changed my life. I didn't know. I'd never seen the kingdom of God just incarnate in my culture like that. It always was like, oh, okay, so I got to do like Kirk Franklin and K-Love for the rest of my life, and that's it. Maybe a choir and a guitar here, and that's all I get. And no shade to either one of those, but I just didn't see it where I came from. And at this show, I saw people from where I came from, pants sagging, fronts in their mouth, hands up, worshiping Jesus, and I was like, bro, my church never touches these people. I didn't know you could do that. So that inspired me to pick the mic back up, because I had put it down after I graduated high school. I started making music in high school real heavy. And I was like, man, I can do this, but I want to do it for Jesus now and tell everybody my story. So I just started to make music and travel every open mic, every restaurant, every church that would have me. I got on the mic and did my thing. And then eventually some people were like, oh, well, would you mind coming back and preaching for us or speaking about this? And I was like, yeah, sure. So I started to preach and talk and share. And my mother is a communication teacher. She's got her PhD in that. So she always taught me how to speak and communicate. But people would tell me when I was younger, you're either going to be a teacher or a preacher when you grow up. And I was like, well, I don't like people telling me what to do, so I'm going to cross those off the list. I'm not doing either one. And they were right. And I'm still salty about it because they were 100% right. And I wasn't. But I do that now. And, just got invited into that stuff. And then I had a friend call me from Florida one day, because I dropped out of college. This is why I was selling insurance when I was 20. A friend called me after this and said, hey, don't freak out, but the Lord just told me you're going back to school soon. And I said, no, he didn't, because God know I don't want to go back to school. So God wouldn't tell you that, because God would not do something I don't want him to do. My theology was bad. And then
Mm.
within a month, I had a full ride scholarship to Regent University, which is where I went to school. And I got my undergrad in biblical studies from there. And because they only had a few undergrad programs at the time, the only one I cared about was Bible.
Right.
And I did that, and I fell just massively in love with just the process of school again, which I didn't like. And I fell in love, with the word even more. I asked the Lord to give me a hunger for the word privately, which he did, because my first prayer, which I always think is interesting, my first prayer when I came to faith was something blasphemous along the lines of this, but very honest. It was I don't like to pray, I don't like to read, and I don't think I really like you. Because if I
Mm.
did, I would have been here a long time ago.
Wow.
You know? And I said, Lord, please change my heart, because I want to want you. I
Right.
want to want you. And following that prayer was like, I want to want the word. I want to read this. And so I just went through this season of like, give me the strength, God, to detox everything that's not you. So I threw, in the day of CDs, I threw all my music away. I threw away, I stopped going out. I stopped going to the movies. I love movies. I love music. So I got rid of those things first. I figured those things I love the most, that are the biggest distractions for me, need to go first, while I have the passion to do this. If I excuse it, I'm going to find a way to keep these in my life. So I got rid of everything. And I just made myself dig in the word. And I fell in love with the word during that season. And then my friend called me about the Bible college. So God was just allowing me to get refined on some stuff that I just wouldn't do on my own. And God was really faithful. So that sent me to Bible college. And then I worked at a crisis pregnancy center here in the area, helping women dealing with those tough decisions. And then I got a job as a youth pastor at a Presbyterian church here in Norfolk West, and I still can't spell Presbyterian to this day. And and as soon as I got that job, I put everything artistic on the shelf, because I thought that the Lord was telling me this is ministry, was to work in the church and have this formal thing, which it is. But I thought that was all it is. So that means I have to let go of this thing. And as soon as I took the job, I put everything on the shelf, because again, I didn't want to idle. So I wanted to Isaac my dream of using music. And January 2013, he laid on the heart of my wife and I that not only am I supposed to go back to that, but I'm supposed to do it full time. And I was like, well, I just got this job. I had a salary. I got a son on the way. It's my second kid. Like, this is nobody knows who I am, and I don't have any money. This is a horrible decision. This can't be Jesus. Let's go talk to a bunch of people who know the Holy Spirit better than us. And we met with a bunch of what I'll call Holy Spirit business guys. Guys are like, yes, God can heal cancer, but what's the spreadsheet say? Type people, you know what I mean?
Okay.
And I was expecting people to just kick me in the butt and give me the good 5-year plan, and the don't do this, and the you can do this, but do it this way. And every one of them, and I'm talking about theologically conservative all the way down to whatever, every one of them was just like, I don't know why, but I think God is saying to do this and you should go for it. And I was just like, this doesn't make sense, bro. So 6 months of that fasting, prayer, and then I put in my 90-day notice. In September 1, 2013, I left my job, started fundraising so I could rap and preach full time, and just trusted God to open up the doors. And next month will be 11 years of being full time, and he's provided for our family.
Wow. Wow. That's incredible. I back in 2019, I was working as a warehouse manager, and I
Mhm.
decided to go back to school, and I was going to go back to school for psychology, um, organizational psychology to help with business, and plus advance myself and all that. And, you know, I lost the job. I was given an ultimatum because the way I was leading was very harsh. But
Mhm.
when I got hired, I was told, like, whip everybody into shape and tighten the ship, like make it a well-oiled organization. And I did that. And after 2 or 3 years, I took it too far, so
Mhm.
I was given a choice to continue to work and be under a probationary period and have everything I do under a microscope, and just to be watched because of my behavior, or to take a severance package. And I was praying, Lord, it was that season when Chandler Moore and Stephanie Gretzinger put out the song Refiner.
Mm-hmm.
And our prayer was, Lord, refine me. I want to be tried by fire. I want to be purified. Refine me. Well, that's a very, very dangerous.
Very dangerous. Very dangerous.
Everything stripped from me. Everything I knew. And the Lord said, I need you to trust me. So I did. And I took my job in ministry about a year and a half ago. And ministry salary, pastoral salary is not what everyone thinks it is, unless you're in like the top 3%.
Yeah.
So we have financial struggles, but the Lord proves himself every single time we go through something. He provides
every time, bro.
To the point where I lost my job. I got a severance package. Plus that was right around COVID. So I got COVID unemployment. And I got all the stimulus packages. Everyone got the stimulus checks. We got all that. We qualified for all that. And then my dad passed away right around there. He had taken out in 1992, mind you, when I was 8 years old, when I first felt the calling on my life. 1992.
Wow, bro, that's crazy.
He took out a life insurance policy that no one knew about. It was enough money for us to pay off all our debt.
Come on, bro.
And buy a van, because I needed a second vehicle. Like I heard the testimonies through my early walk in Christ, all these testimonies of people in ministry, pastors, followers of Christ, the Lord doing this, the Lord doing that, people praying over their vehicle and their vehicle starting to work again, like all that stuff. And I was like, yeah, okay. I don't know.
Yeah.
And then it starts to happen to you and you're like,
yeah.
But similar, the crazy stuff. That's the crazy step. That's the step of obedience. Me and my wife have compared it to when the Red Sea split and everybody saw it split, everybody crossed. But when they got to the Jordan, they had to step into the water before the Jordan River could split. Sometimes your step of obedience has to have some danger to it.
Yeah. You've already seen this before.
Ooh, this is crazy.
That's good, bro. That's beautiful.
So, but yeah,
congrats to you and your wife, man. That's really cool to hear.
Thank you.
My wife and I, similar COVID story, just real quick. She, my wife's a righteous woman, but don't cross it because she's a little hood, right? And she had a boss at her job. She had a boss at her job that was crossing some lines as far as how he's talking to people. So she took him to HR, put him on blast. He got in trouble. She transcribed the whole conversation. So he was looking for revenge. So enter COVID. And Virginia's, was it right to hire, right to work state? I can't remember, but they could just fire you, whatever. So he used COVID. They had to do some layoffs. He only laid off her and her friend that took him to HR, nobody else, because he wanted to send a message. Wow. So, she got a severance package after 12 years with the company. Talked to my lawyer. He was like, dude, this is a good deal. Take it. So severance package, unemployment, a couple stimmies, paid off the cars, and I just rode the year out. And she had been wanting to come home, but I didn't see a path to do that. Just with what I make, I don't make much. And January was like, let's just take the year and then just pray. And January 2021 comes around. I'm like, well, no, I don't think that you should go back to work. This doesn't make sense on paper, but let's just trust Jesus and see if we're right. And she's been, full-time helping me out since then. And we've been doing better than we were when we had her salary. And not because I make a lot more, just the Lord has been incredibly faithful with how it worked out. So, I'm with you, bro. God just provides. And So,
the craziest part about that whole season, like hundreds of applications, resumes, things sent out to try and find work. Not a single company. I'm talking Walmart. I'm talking grocery stores, Lowe's, Home Depot. Nobody. I was either overqualified, underqualified, or didn't fit whatever their parameters. And I'm like, nobody wants to hire me. Nobody. What are you doing to me, Lord? Nobody.
Yeah.
But yeah, I that's awesome, man.
Good, bro.
So doing a little bit of research into, like checking out your social media profiles, learning a little bit about, your heart, your passion, as far as what you share, your focus is on forgiveness and life change. And we kind of we talked about that with, the forgiveness of our father. So we both have a little story about that, and I shared about my
Yeah.
book, and share a little bit about that focus of yours, what it means for your ministry. What is it? Would you consider it the heartbeat of your ministry?
Yeah, I think you could say everybody says what forgiveness is, so I lead with that. But I think the heartbeat of my ministry is reconciliation. So whether that's sons to fathers, fathers to sons, family situations, or if it's racial, political, theological, to just
Mm.
reconciliation on the major things. Um, we've led racial reconciliation efforts in my community, from Trayvon Martin and on, when based on how you vote or what church you go to, you don't want to talk about it, or that's all you talk about, or whatever. And just people who just wouldn't, you're going to be in eternity forever, but here you won't hang out and grab coffee, kind of thing. So so anything that's reconciliation based is my heartbeat. And my mentor, Dr. Jack Gaines, was one who taught me to teach a reconciled paradigm, that we are reconciled in Christ and we need to live backwards from that in this life. And he was the second black pitcher signed to the Boston Red Sox on the major league roster.
Wow.
It's right here in Chesapeake, and so he experienced, right after Jackie Robinson, just a lot of the racial, saying death threats for striking out white boys and being shouted in words from the stand and all that. And he had every right in his life to be a bitter old dude, and you'd have to give him a pass. And I've never seen anybody fight harder for the gospel and reconciliation in my life.
Mm.
And so I just, that type of thing. And for me, man, like when I go out and I teach and talk about forgiveness, I'm actually going to do this in a few months. And this one, like 2 months, a month, 2 months now. Yeah, this big church hired me to come out, which is, I'm really excited about it. But I teach about forgiveness in 4 parts, a 4-part framework of it. And it's this, the forgiveness is 4 different things. And it's why people have difficulty forgiving, because they don't break these things apart and know how to navigate them. And it's forgiveness, justice, trust, and then reconciliation, in that
Mm.
order. A lot of people are afraid to forgive because they feel like, well, I won't get the justice that I deserve, which may or may not be true. But forgiveness is simply letting the debt go. Like, I'm letting go of you needing to be this for me to be okay. I release you of that debt, like you said to your father.
Right.
Justice is getting the debt paid. There is an apology. There is some restitution made, whatever that looks like. And that's okay to pursue. Um, I remember talking about forgiveness at a school, and telling my story about my dad. And the girl came up to me and she's like, "Yeah, okay, so," and she thought this is what I was saying, and it scared me. She says, "Okay, great. So in order to forgive the person that molested me, I just need to let it go and tell them it's okay and let them back into my life, so I can really
Mm-mm.
prove that am I forgiven." And I was like, "No, that's not what I'm saying."
Absolutely not.
Uh, I said, "You can forgive them from here,
Yeah.
but if that happened, we still need to make a phone call. I'll help you. Like, let's go get them." You know what I'm saying? You can let go of the debt, but still pursue justice, and those things are okay. And in an imperfect world, justice may or may not happen as it should. Just, we know that for a fact.
Mm.
Um, but then there's, earning trust, and then eventually getting to a place where both of us fight to reconcile, to get back to where we need to be. And if you break apart those 4 things well, you can navigate how you need to navigate in different situations. So I
Absolutely.
try to teach that, and then thank you. I try to teach that, and then I back it into the Lord's Prayer. Lord, forgive us, present tense, for what we've done, as we already have, past tense, forgiven those who sinned against us.
Right.
So the Lord is like walking in a reconciled paradigm where you're already giving away the thing you need from the Father in the present. Um, so I try to model that the best I can, and live that the best I can, and teach that the best I can. So
Absolutely. Yeah. Forgiveness, man. I always share that forgiveness, um, and love, love through forgiveness is not
mm-hmm.
enabling. Just
Mm-hmm.
because I forgive you, right? I can still love you, but like you said, from a distance, that doesn't mean I have to let you back in. That doesn't
Right.
mean I have to give you an opportunity to do to me again what you've done to me, or worse, or differently. Like, forgiveness is not a free ticket to abuse again.
Right.
Forgiveness is, I learned this. Um, Tests have proven, they've done studies that unforgiveness and bitterness cause more Alzheimer's, dementia, mental instability, mental disorders. Like you can read through the DSM-5. I have a copy of it back there on my shelf.
Mm.
You can read through the DSM-5 and see all these disorders and all these things. Most of
Wow.
them, majority of them are related to trauma, unhealed trauma, and unforgiveness. Like when it doesn't say that, but when you read it, you okay, the way to get through that is to let go of it, to forgive it, to
Interesting.
let that charge go. People are mentally sick.
Wow.
People are running around all kinds of crazy in our world because they're unwilling to forgive, because they don't know how to forgive. They've never been
Yeah.
taught to forgive. We teach justice, justice, justice. You get what you deserve. You know, you get what you earn. You know, you deserve justice. Well, the Bible says that God is our vindicator.
Mhm.
You know, justice
Mhm.
belongs to him. So
Yeah. 100%.
my forgiveness is me taking my charge I have against you and giving it to him.
Big facts.
Like
Big facts.
when we can grab that, man. But yeah, man, I love forgiveness. I love talking about forgiveness. I could probably do a whole podcast just on forgiveness.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, we need it, man. Like even right now when, you're filming this, don't know it in the air, but in the middle of just tense political stuff. And I've been telling
mm,
every time somebody invites me on the stage for the past 4 years, I was like, hey, in 4 years, everything's going to devolve again into madness. And if we are who we say we are as a church, we literally have the market, share on forgiveness and reconciliation if we really understand.
absolutely.
So watching believers run in the opposite direction of reconciliation,
Yeah,
and justifying it with, well, if they do this, this country's going to be that, and they're Marxist and they're racist and they hate babies and they hate black people and all that stuff, and maybe there's some truth there and all that stuff, but like at the end of the day, if those things are 100% true, what you can't get away from is that Jesus said, "Love your enemies and pray
mm-hmm.
for those who persecute you." And in election years, we tear that page out and throw it in the trash.
Yep, absolutely.
We don't care what Jesus said, which then puts us in, why do you call me Lord and not do what I say? So there's no way around the fact that we have to forgive and love our enemies, even while we're pursuing justice and truth. And we don't have to
Absolutely.
trust them because Jesus looked around, he knew it was in their heart. He would not trust himself to them, right? We get that.
Yeah,
But the utter disregard for the commands of the Lord when we don't want to reconcile is baffling to me. And that's what I don't get. I get it. I do. I get it. Let me not say I don't get it. I get it.
right.
But the inability to repent and deal with why we don't want to do that is frustrating.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
The world is gonna world. The
Mhm.
world is gonna world, man. I remember, a couple of weeks ago, the Olympics, everybody went crazy, and I'm like, the world is gonna world. Like
Mhm.
we see this big event, we're like, oh yeah, it's great, but this happened, and we're against this, and boycott the whole thing. Do you know that the Olympics were founded as a way to worship Zeus on Mount Olympus? Like,
Yeah, I'm like,
well,
do we, do we want to talk about Greek gyms and athletics? Like, do we want to go there? Like,
they've
what do
never been a
you?
Christian. It's never been a Christian sport. It's never. Actually, they persecuted Christians during the Olympics during a certain several um, iterations of the Olympics. They used them as sport. Like,
Yeah,
so why do we think they're
yeah,
going to worship Jesus?
yeah. I mean, like, and at the end of the day, like, I do get the outrage. I get it. I
Yeah, me
understand it
too.
because,
It's
like, if
it's insulting.
somebody was to put a picture of my mom up or my wife up or my kids up and do something blasphemous or
Absolutely.
just, I'd be infuriated. So how much more for our Lord? So I'm
Right.
with that. I get it. But I also expect it when they'll hate you because they hated me first, right?
Right.
Um, and even in the black community, in certain black circles, they were like, "Why y'all tripping out that they're mocking this picture of this historically inaccurate Last Supper, where everybody's like white Europeans or whatever, da da da, da, and
Right.
everybody's on one side of the table. Like, why are you mad about that?"
Right.
And for me, I was like, well, that's not even the conversation because if we had a historically accurate picture of the Last Supper, it doesn't mean they wouldn't have mocked it anyway.
Right.
Um, so I'm just like, everybody was mad about their different side of why they were mad. And I'm just like, dude, have some righteous anger for sure, but represent Christ well with how you do that. And,
Exactly.
we need to see more of that. So,
Exactly. Exactly. All right. Now comes the fun part.
Oh, sweet.
We get to talk about
Oh,
Safe House Project.
oh yeah.
When
Thanks, bro.
when I saw this and I saw that I looked up I went on YouTube, yeah. I went on Google and searched it and looked at exactly what it is. I'm like, man, this is awesome because it reminds me of one of the ministries that I was involved in a few years back. We went on a little local missions trip to Atlanta, and part of that is Frontline, which part of that is Out of the Darkness, which works with human trafficking. And man, it's just crazy, the statistics when you see them and when you read about it, and it's like, man. So I really just want to hear exactly what it is Safe House Project does and what your involvement and what was your heart, what stirred you up to want to pursue this mission.
Yeah, it was really, really simple. We went to South Africa to work with an orphan care center that my church partners with. It was my first official mission trip, my first trip to Africa, all that stuff. And we just a beautiful place where these kids who, were either single or double orphan due to HIV/AIDS, because that crisis is still rampant in their community, had a place to go to get loved on, get homework, get food, clothing, gospel, like all that. So we're supporting Dr. Marsha and Dr. Jenny, and I'm getting ready to leave. And it's a little girl, slightly older than my daughter at the time. And I'm like, hey, this is beautiful. Like, what else do y'all need here? And Dr. Marsha said, we really need a safe house. And I said, what? Why? What is that? And Dr. Marsha began to explain how when their girls get older and develop, they become targeted for traffickers and evil people. And I'm looking at this girl, a little older than my daughter, and I said, wait, so you mean if I come back, she might be missing? And she said, possibly. And I couldn't shake that out of my head on the plane ride home. We need a safe house. We need a safe house. And then I landed in Norfolk when we got off the plane, cut your phone back on. And I remember getting dinged with all the alerts. And the only one I remember is ding, Hampton Roads, 14th in the nation for sex trafficking. And I'm like, what is this? I just never have seen any of this before. Like, it never hit me. I visited IJM and all that, cool, but it didn't grab my heart. It was like, oh, I'm glad they're working on that. So after a short depression, I stood up in front of our church and I said, we got to help them build a safe house. I don't know. I don't have any money, and all I know how to do is rap. So I'm gonna make an album. I need y'all to support it. And if anybody hears this album, I'm gonna ask them to send a check. And my friend Christy came up to my wife Tia and was like, hey, I've been dreaming about fighting this since I was 16 on a mission trip. And I saw how bad it was. I'm in, whatever I need to do. And she just took a PR role and was emailing outlets and pushing the album out, And people started sending checks, and we started seeing some movement. And people, a bunch of Christian hip hop artists hopped on the album, like Jerry Sanders and Truth and KJ Scriven, and like God was just really moving. And then it was looking like we were going to get the house up, like everything was moving. And then Christy says, well, what do we do to continue this here in the States? And I was like, I don't know. And we started to dream about what that would look like. And so Christy and I started Safe House Project as its own nonprofit apart from mine. She stepped in as CEO. My friend Brittany stepped in as COO. I stayed on the board as founder. And they just took this thing somewhere here in the States I just never imagined. Yeah. We got the house up in South Africa. We actually ended up with 2. And then they were like, we're going to build houses all across this country, support houses in this country, unify the anti-human trafficking industry, get legislation so there's federal requirements, lobby for everything. We're talking to airlines and hotel chains, and actually trained entire governments and police departments and aircraft carriers on like, hey, this is what trafficking is. This is what it looks like. This is how you address it. It's not just old dudes in creepy white vans. Like it's your next door neighbor. Mm-hmm. It's the kid with 2 phones. There's a lot of stuff going on. And so we've created an educational platform called On Watch. That's free. I am onwatch.org, where people can just play it for their church, their youth group, their business, and just get trained on this is what it is. This is how you look out for it. This is how you make sure it doesn't happen under your nose. which was the problem in America, because it was like, oh, those poor kids over there problem. And meanwhile, it's 300,000 kids a year here, and we only ever identify 1%.
Mm.
And so that was the call, was like, how do we ruthlessly eradicate trafficking in America by the year 2030? That's our big, hairy, audacious goal. And the doors God has flung open for us to actually see that happen with all the many people who are just ferociously tackling this problem, reaching out to people and bringing justice to perpetrators is insane, man. God is just really moving, and we just get to be a part of it. So Safe House Project is on the move.
Man, that's awesome.
Yeah.
It's one of those things, like, so while we were on our trip, it was a trip that was mostly teenagers. It was a summertime trip. It was mostly teenagers, youth groups. Our church sent a group of adults because one of the ladies that was in our church, she wanted to start some kind of outreach, homeless outreach, street outreach, and God's blessed her ministry. Like, she's doing some amazing things right now. They opened up a women's sober living house. They're in the process of opening up a men's sober living house. They feed like 500 to 800 people every week. Like, it's just incredible what they're doing.
Beautiful.
But what we learned is that the founder and CEO, like the top guys, came to do a special like seminar with our group because they knew we were wanting to launch something back here in Lafayette. One of the things he told us that really hit all of us really hard is where we are in Lafayette is I-10 and I-49 meet. That is one of the hottest spots for trafficking in the country, because well, I-10 takes you Houston and west, right? Goes east to Atlanta, New Orleans towards Atlanta that way. I-49 goes up towards Arkansas, and then you hit I-20, which takes you towards Dallas, and then the other. So like, it's a major intersection for trafficking. And we were like, man, right here in our own backyard, like one of the hottest spots for trafficking, for transfers, for people moving people around from one vehicle to another. Like, it's right there. And it's like, oh man, like that it hit hard. Right.
Yeah.
And
it's in all of our backyards, man.
It's right on the north side of town where there's a lot of rundown hotels and motels, a lot of poor communities, a lot of your impoverished people are right there in that community where those two meet anyway. And the craziest part is one of our AG churches is right there on that corner. And they're doing everything they can to do outreach and try and help. It's like, there's a spot there, but how many people know about it? Like, it's like, there's just, the world is worlding all around us.
Yeah. Well, connect that church with On Watch. I am onwatch.org, so they can see, like, here's some ways I can respond. Here's some things I can do. Here's how I can recognize it.
Right.
Because that's what it's built for, is to educate and empower people to. Because if you only wait for the specialists to do it, we're never going to fix anything.
That's right.
We need all hands on deck. And it's definitely happening where, of course, where there's low resources, nobody's looking, nobody cares about this community, like, rampant, right? But it's also happening, and I'd argue an equal amount at the places where everybody thinks they're safe, where we do have resources, where it's, suburbia, nothing bad's going on here. Like, all that stuff is happening.
Right.
Because people aren't looking because they think they're safe because they're not at that poor part of town over there. It's definitely, that's 100% what's going on because nobody's looking. Right. So everybody everywhere needs to be equipped and aware of what it is and what's online activity and social stuff and what's happening with your kids. And big work needs to be done, but we're doing it. God's moving.
Awesome. Hey, so with that, we're going to take a short little break to catch a word from our sponsors. We will be right back. Stay tuned for more. This conversation's going places. We'll see you in a few minutes. Hey, everybody, what's going on? We're just taking a quick little breather, taking a coffee break for a second. Grab yourself a cup of coffee. But speaking of coffee, a couple episodes back, me and Pastor Seth had a conversation about coffee, but I'm here to officially announce the official coffee of the Reformationist podcast. Recently, I got a little package in the mail with some of their blends, some samples to try. Got a few different blends here and little perfectly sized portion packs to brew drip pot, a regular drip pot. They've got K cups. They've got multiple blends. They've got everything from these little 2-ounce sizes all the way up to 5-pound bags. You can subscribe and save, and it'll get auto shipped to you, and it'll auto charge from your whatever account you're paying from. But our friends over at Southern Roots Coffee, you can check them out. The link is going to be at the bottom of the screen, www.southernrootscoffee.com. Locally roasted from up in Alexandria, Louisiana. Some friends of mine, the Warrens, they're a ministry family. Him and his family pastor a church up in Alexandria, and they roast coffee. So it's roasted right here in small batches in Louisiana, in Alexandria. I've been drinking their coffee longer than I've actually known I've been drinking their coffee, because they used to supply a local coffee shop that me and my wife used to go to regularly. And I fell in love with the coffee. Every time we went, every time I was in town, I was like, I need that coffee. I need that coffee. And then over time, I found out that it was Southern Roots Coffee. So, hey, if you're looking for a good, small batch, locally roasted coffee blend, go and check out Southern Roots Coffee. They've got a variety of blends for you. They've got the Lakeview. They've got Casa, Legacy, 120. They've got the Debut blend, which comes in 3 varieties, medium, dark, and dark. They've also got decaf. And like I said, K-Cups. I'm pretty sure you can get any of those blends in a K-Cup. Small orders, small batches, roasted fresh. If you're a business or a church or a coffee shop looking for a supplier, reach out to them. They can probably help you with that too. Hey, but go check them out. www.southernrootscoffee.com. And let's get back to the Reformationist podcast. Hey, thanks everybody for coming back and sticking with us. We got a little bit more. We're almost done. I could see the end of the rainbow, I guess you could call it, but we're almost there. So, we talk about family and ministry, and you've mentioned your family, and married for 18 years. Congratulations. That's incredible.
Thank you, bro. Appreciate that.
So tell me a little bit about your family and the impact of ministry on your family. And I don't know, you might be able to hear, I got my family in the background. They're hollering.
I love it, bro. I love it.
So it's real. It's who we are. It's what ministry is, right?
I love it, bro.
So share a little bit about your family.
Man, we're good, man. Like I said, my wife and I have been kicking it for a long time. We met in 7th grade, actually.
Wow.
Yeah. She didn't like me back then, though, because she just didn't know what she was missing out on. You know what I mean? And we started dating in 12, and just had the same class and caught each other's eyes. Started dating, and we dated for about 4 years. So a little breakup here and there, but when she graduated college, we went to the Justice of Peace and just got married. We never had a wedding. It's $50, piece of paper. And we just kept it moving, man. And God has just been faithful in our marriage, man. She makes me better every day. She loves the Lord, and she is just, the Lord hears her prayers. She prays and stuff happens. Like, it's crazy. And we got 2 beautiful kids. My daughter Shekinah is going into 9th grade, and my son Josiah is going into 6th grade. They're 14 and 11. And it's just been fun to watch them flourish and grow. They've never known a life where I wasn't involved in ministry, my kids. And my wife has been with me when I was running away from Jesus to when we both started to turn towards him. In fact, we had a little breakup season when, I tried to get her back. She was like, well, I'm going to church now. If you're going to be with me, you got to go to church. And I was like, fine, I'll go to church. And, so I think she, I tell people that the Lord used her to drag me into the kingdom, kicking and screaming. So, but yeah, man, it's been a fun ride, man. She's been with me since, she's the one that took me to that Christian hip hop show. And that changed my life. And she's the one that has been with me at every open mic, every show, every concert, every time that she's been there the entire time. I don't think she missed a show until she was pregnant with our daughter. God has just been all in my family and all in my marriage the entire time. And it's been a really good thing. So my kids have grown up seeing me preach. I preach at our home church. They've seen me doing shows, making music. They've yelled and said ad-libs in the back of some of my songs. Traveled out of town with me to do stuff. And I travel a bunch. So unfortunately that happens. But it's never been a thing where I think it put our family in an unhealthy place. Because I told God that if this ever gets in the way of, my family and my marriage, then I'll assume that's not you and I'll quit that day. And
Mhm.
and they've all been very supportive the entire time, and God's provided for us through it. So I consider us a family unit, kind of on mission, and my kids don't know anything other than that, for better or for worse. That's
Yeah.
all they really know. Um, and and nobody kind of in our circles kind of has the same type of frame of life we do.
Right.
So when they look around and see other things, I don't know how much of it they see us and see a difference, and then they see us and see similarities. I don't know, but God's been really faithful, and I've watched Him shape them, and it's just fun.
That's awesome. I love that. I love that name, Shekinah, man. Like when I when I
Thank you.
first when I first came to the Lord, like I said earlier, I grew up Catholic. So like some of these words and terms I didn't know. And I heard that and they were singing 10 years ago. Um the song Shekinah Glory Come Down.
Hmm.
Uh what's his name? Gilman and Asbury from I think it was IHOP, International House of Prayer back then, did the
Hmm.
song. And I'm like,
Okay.
Shekinah Glory, Shekinah Glory. I'm like, what does that mean? And I
Right.
looked up what the word meant. I'm like, oh, that's beautiful. And then I hear that. I'm like, oh man. We our first two children, Peter, my son, he's named after me, he's Peter the third. So I wasn't
Hmm.
going to name another child Peter, but then we talked about the reconciliation I had, the spiritual reconciliation I had with my dad. I'm like, I'm going to redeem the bloodline and I'm
Hmm.
going to name my son after me.
Hmm.
Regardless of him being the third, he's going to be named after me and he's going to carry the legacy. And
I love
then
it.
uh second child was Emily, spelled Emmalee. It means whole healer
Hmm.
because we're in inner healing and deliverance ministry, which is where the lean on forgiveness comes from.
Hmm.
But man, we did that, and then we had a lot of issues and health problems with me over the years. But we finally were able to have the our third child, and her name, the Lord named her before we even got pregnant. But
Hmm.
whether it was him or her, it was going to be Elisha, named after
Hmm.
Elijah's protege, Elijah's student. So
Hmm.
Elisha, Yoel, Y-O apostrophe E-L. So it's the Hebrew of Joel, another prophet.
Hmm. Hmm.
Samuel, the female version of Samuel, which is the story we leaned on as we were trying to have the third child, our third child. So Samuel's mother prayed and prayed and prayed, and she was barren
Hmm.
and she couldn't conceive. And then the Lord heard her, and she had Samuel the prophet. So she's got a triple prophetic name. And if
Yeah,
you
about to
hear,
say.
I don't know if the microphone's picking it up because I have a sound setting on there that it can't. But if you hear the screaming, it's her. She is the loudest of the three, and she
It
will let
is.
you know. So it's just I love names. I love. So that's why when I
You
saw the
loaded her up
names,
with prophetic names, bro. That's,
yeah.
of
But
course she's gonna be loud.
when I saw the name Shekinah and I saw the name Josiah, I was like, oh, I love those names, man. I'm a name
Thank you.
person. I like names. I'm As a writer, I'm a character developer. I like to develop characters. So I take a lot of stock in names and meanings and like I've written two fiction books and the one I literally
What's up?
it was a crime book. I literally had files like FBI dossier files on each character
Wow,
as I that's the first thing I did as I wrote the story. So I'm like, I go very very deep with character creation in my stories. But
that's
man,
good.
like I just love names. But so real
Hey, I'll
quick,
tell you this, since real quick, since you love names. So she kind of obviously means the glory of God, right?
yeah,
And we it was weird because we before T and I were talking about having kids, just random thought one day, and I was like, hey, if we have a girl, we should name her Shekinah, and just felt like the Lord just like snapped that into my mind or whatever. So she gets pregnant, we name her Shekinah, and this is I don't know, maybe 7, 8 years removed from my dad's story. And I've got this joy of my first kid, but fear of messing things up, right? Like
right,
he did.
right.
So fast forward, Shekinah's born. She comes 2 weeks early. That's going to be important in a minute. And I'm holding her, and she's like 5 minutes old. And I'm looking at the Shekinah glory, right? and I'm scared to death. And my mom kind of says, "Do you have any idea what today is?" I'm like, "No." But Shekinah, who came 2 weeks early, said, "Today is your father's birthday."
Mm. Wow. Who?
Crazy, right?
Mm.
Never knew my dad's birthday to the day my daughter was born,
Yeah.
and it was just God saying to me, in a non-new agey weird reincarnation, kind of none of that, but just
Yeah.
saying to me, if you'll trust me with this part of your life, I've got it. You know,
Mm.
um, and you'll never guess the birth date.
What's that?
7/7.
Wow.
You
Wow.
can't plan that, man. God just sprinkle a little hints.
That's awesome.
Um, so fast forward 3 years to Joe. I'm trying to figure out how do I honor my father, like you did with yours. Like he's been dead for 10 years or so now. I don't know how to do that. And I tell my wife, I was like, hey, if we have a boy, would you be okay with making his middle name my father's first name, which is Daniel, like Daniel but with a Z? And Tia said, that's cool. For a first name, I like the name Josiah. And I was like, I don't know, man. I'm trying to, maybe we do something else. I'm starting to look for like, and I'm trying to get too deep. I'm trying to find like really hard to pronounce multi-syllable biblical names that nobody knows. I'm I'm looking at all the David's sons' names, and I was like, what about this one? What about Adonijah? She was like, no. And so she's pregnant. She wins the argument. We land on Josiah's annual, and we're about 8 months in, and I was like, I should probably look up what Josiah means. And then it just all made sense. It all made sense. I'm sitting in a donut shop with a Bible name book, just looking really out of place. And she said, and when I see it, the placement of the names, I just saw God doing what He did with Shekinah again.
Mm-hmm.
Josiah means Yahweh heals.
Yep.
So my son's name is Yahweh heals Daniel Anderson. And I was just like, okay, all right. My son's name is pretty much, to me, God heals my dad.
That's
And
beautiful.
just lets me know that God's involved even when we don't think He is. So
Right. Right.
yeah.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned some of those names. I was reading this morning in Exodus where
Mm,
they're building the temple, the tabernacle, and the tent of meeting, and it's like you
mm.
got Bezaleel and Aholiab. I was like, babe, how about the next kid? When we have our next kid, we name him Aholiab, and she's like,
Oh, holy yeah. Yeah.
no. But funny thing about that, of course, the Catholic background. When we first got together, I was still Catholic, and I said,
Mm.
man, I want to name one of my kids Benedict after Saint Benedict. She was like, I'm not naming my kid after some breakfast dish.
Right. Right.
I'm glad
You
we
could have hit
didn't.
her with like Cumberbatch, like he's a famous actor, maybe.
Right, right. I'm glad we didn't because but man, the birthday to my daughter, my Elisha, that was the baby. She was born, my dad was born 11/7. She
Mm-hmm.
was born 11/17.
Crazy.
And we were like right there and she was close. And I'm like, man, imagine if the baby's born,
Yeah.
on my dad's birthday, how cool would that be? And I was like,
Crazy.
oh, 11/17.
Still
So
there. Yeah. That's
it's
actually my wife's birthday, 11/7. So
10 days later, 10 days. But it's cool.
crazy, bro.
All right,
Crazy,
man.
crazy.
Family's important. I saw something. Me and my wife had a conversation this morning about it. Like, you know, one of those things. If something ministry ever gets
Mm-hmm.
in the way of us taking care of our family,
Mm-hmm.
then like you said, I know it's is it really from the Lord? Because I don't. Our first ministry is the family. I've shared it
Yeah.
before, where the first thing established before any government, any church, any societal constraints, the first thing established was the family. God established
Mm-hmm.
Adam and Eve and their
Mm-hmm.
children first. So it's like we have to honor that. But where do we draw the line? Because Jesus himself says, whoever cannot forsake mother, father, wife
Mm-hmm.
for the sake of me is not fit.
Mm-hmm.
And
Absolutely.
we were talking about that, and I said, but what we have to understand is our family's healthy. If our
mm,
family's not healthy, then we have no right to try and help other people get fixed.
mm,
If our family's healthy and they're taken care of, and
mm,
something ministry related happens, someone goes into the hospital and it's supposed to be, hey, I have to leave the house tonight at dinner time to go visit this person at the hospital. It's serious. Like, that's the
mm,
difference. Like, my family's healthy. My family's not in crisis mode. And if my family is in crisis mode, I have to humble myself enough to call my leader, call my pastor, call my boss and be like, look, I've got to take care of this situation. I need to
mm.
take some time to take care of this. I'm going to be out for a couple days, week, whatever. We have to be
Yeah,
able to recognize that and humble ourselves to that point. And she was like, "Oh, that
100%.
makes sense." So, but we do. We have to have a good balance of both. You know.
Yeah, I mean, you hit it when you said, it's on the back end of that verse, for my sake, right? Like if, T and I we make all our decisions together. Like we don't, there's no, if a booking comes in or a request comes in, I don't take it unless she knows about the date, the weekend, the time.
Right.
And sometimes I run it past the kids, like, y'all cool if I take this? Like, but it's really me and her. Like, so we look at that stuff together. So when it comes time to go and do things, if it's too much going on, if it's too much activity that week, it's like it's not going to be healthy for us. I just turn it down. And like my metric has been, if they can pay me $10,000 and God says don't go, I ain't going.
Mm-hmm.
If they can't pay me and God says go, I'm gonna go. So everything in between is easy,
Right.
and that's kind of our metric. So like, I just run everything past her, and since we're living for His sake, we're able to do those things together and make. So it's not one person like, well, I got to go minister. Like, I know you don't get it because you're not on stage, so let me go do it. I don't do all that. I don't care what she gets or doesn't get. Like,
Right.
she gets me, and she understands the voice of God, and we lead this family together. So like, if she's not feeling something, then we got to be on one accord. Those
Mm-hmm.
are easy decisions. We both feel like this is right. Let's go.
Absolutely.
If we're missing something, we're missing each other. Let's make our case and come to the table and see if if I'm off for some false reason or you're off or you didn't have context, whatever. But most of the time we're aligned on all our decisions about yeses or nos. She leans to me, I lean to her. So um, that's kind of how we move with that. And I think the biggest thing, man, is just really taking time for each other and to rest. So that's what we're trying to get better at.
Absolutely. Come to the realization this month we took July last month. We took July pretty much off. We did our normal stuff. We went on vacation and I stayed off of social media. I stayed off of any podcast work. I just shut everything down for a month. Did our regular ministry at church and our ministry at home. But other than that, like I said, I'm not doing anything extra in July. And I realized one thing by being off of social media and all that, like, man, our time is valuable.
Mhm.
Our time is a very valuable, non-renewable resource.
Mhm.
And we just have to be very purposeful and be good stewards of all of that. We're called
Absolutely.
as pastors and ministers, we're called to be stewards of a divine mystery. And part of that is being good stewards of our time.
Yep.
Um, so, you talked about Regent University. You're an alum of Regent. I'm an alum of
Mhm.
Southwestern Assemblies of God University, now known as Nelson University in Waxahachie. Um, Great Bible colleges, great schools, great education, but there's parts of
Mhm.
this ministry walk that we do that they don't teach you about.
Mhm.
What's one thing that sticks out to you that was maybe a hard lesson for you or something you're grateful that you learned by experience that maybe wasn't something they taught you about in Bible college, something you weren't prepared for per se?
Yeah. How to Sabbath.
Oof, that's good.
It's never
Oh,
discussed.
oh man. We just did a week, 7-day intense prayer and fasting with our leadership team. And Monday
Mhm.
night I ended it. I did a traditional like Passover Seder. I
It's
prepared
good.
I prepared the food. I mean even the bread. I didn't go by matzah. I mixed dough, mixed flour, water, oil, and salt and like rolled it out. That's the hardest thing I've done. And I have a culinary background. So like that unleavened bread is hard to make, but man, I learning to do that, you're absolutely right, man. Share a little bit.
I mean, there was never any. I mean, the Ten Commandments on the wall, but there was never any teaching. I don't remember a single teaching on Sabbath. It was always come to church service. That's Sabbath. That ain't Sabbath, especially if you're in ministry. And there was never any teaching or talking about it. So just to focus on the practical of it, the spiritual mystery of it, none of that stuff. And I have respect for our Seventh Day Adventist friends for maintaining the biblical Sabbath of sundown to sundown, Friday to Saturday. I respect that heavily. I don't think that's required in the New Covenant at all, but I think I respect if your life can do that. 1000% respect it. If our lives could do that, even though we're not Seventh Day Adventists, I would definitely do that. So I kind of got wind of John Mark Comer, who's getting a lot of press these days, and I'm happy for him. And his book, The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry. And I just was realizing that I just wasn't resting, taking days off, still thinking about ministry stuff and doing the work of the Lord, and so busy sometimes you can forget the Lord of the work as far as taking the time He requires you to take. And I just really started to commit to little things in my life, just little tweaks, like my phone's going on DND at this time. I'm not checking anything after that. I'm not doing this when the laptop closes at this time. I'm just so learning that type of stuff. But really, man, the only place I see heavily teaching those spiritual disciplines are John Mark Comer and his ilk of folks that are really like in that new spiritual practices wave that the Western church has desperately been without. And I learned fasting growing up. I learned those type of things. Never learned solitude. So just things like that. Like, how do you incorporate that into your life? And I was actually meeting with my assistant this week about, we mapped out my whole calendar through August next year. And I was like, how do I retrofit in spaces for Sabbath with, travel volleyball and school and trips I have coming up and all that stuff? Because it may not always be this 24-hour Saturday thing, but just the fact that it was never taught. I took my daughter out to lunch yesterday and I said, I'm trying to work this into my life now because I need the next 4 years of your life for you to see the difference. So when you go out here and go to college or start your life or whatever, you don't get caught up in Western busyness that has you fried and you can't sleep at night. Like, that's not what God has for us.
Yeah.
But nobody taught us how to do that. I never heard it taught on. There's no seminary teaching on here's how you Sabbath and don't burn yourself out that I've seen. I'm sure there's a don't burn out teaching somewhere. I'm sure there is.
Right.
But what does Sabbath look like now? Whether you keep it traditionally or you work it into whatever, just the fact that it was completely skipped was not helpful. And I'm talking about not just going to get a degree. I'm talking about Sunday sermons.
Yeah.
And that's the part of life the part of discipleship that I think we've woefully missed. We need to work that. We need to prioritize that.
Yeah. You mentioned that this week I've been reading in Exodus. So a couple of weeks ago, I preached a message about Jesus. He was very clear to tell us that he didn't come to abolish the law and the prophets, but to fulfill. What did he fulfill? He fulfilled the sacrificial need of our sin, right? He didn't abolish or get rid of any bit of the law. He said, not a single iota of this law will pass away, right? Until the Son of Man comes in his glory, right? So I gave the homework. Let's go back and read through the law and see what in there, like it was given to us as guidelines to live. We talk about in our modern culture, living our best life, quote unquote, live your best life. Well, how do you live your best life? Well, God gave us an outline, So one of the things that clicked, I started in Exodus. I gave homework. Let's read from Exodus after they're delivered out of Egypt. You can read the whole thing. That's basically, it's up to you. But let's start where the law starts and read through the whole entire law, just to improve ourselves and what we know and what we understand about it. And we'll talk about it for the next few weeks. One of the things that hit me is in Exodus chapter 31, starting in verse 12, it talks about the Sabbath law. And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, speak also to the children of Israel, saying, surely my Sabbaths you shall keep, for it is a sign between me and you throughout your generations, that you may know that I am the Lord who sanctifies you. You shall keep the Sabbath, therefore, for it is holy to you. Everyone who profanes it shall surely be put to death.
Mm-hmm.
Like that right there, profaning the Sabbath is a
Yeah.
death sentence. And part of that is, okay, our sin nature. What does our sin nature do to our lives? Well, the average human lives to around 70 years old. The Bible says we're supposed to live to 120.
Mm-hmm.
So our sin nature takes 40 to 50 years off of our life, including not
Interesting.
honoring the Sabbath rest.
Mm-hmm.
Like when we look at that, so that right there, if you do the math, the seventh day, 1 day a week, one full 24-hour day a week, there's 52 Sabbath days in a year,
Mm-hmm.
right? How many years is that? In 70 years that we live, how many? That's about 10 years we lose just by not honoring the Sabbath. If at the current age of 70, like when you just
Interesting.
basic, like man, like let's honor that rest, because if you
Yeah.
don't, you work yourself to the bone. Whether it's physical, psychological, spiritual work, just constant work. Now,
Mm-hmm.
like Jesus says, if your donkey falls in a ditch on the Sabbath, for goodness sake, rescue it,
Yeah.
right? But if you don't have a donkey in a ditch, honor the Sabbath. Don't be
Yeah.
religious about it,
Absolutely.
saying like I can't, like modern day Sabbath keepers, I can't run the microwave because I'm not supposed to let a fire in my house. Like that's different, right?
Right.
Like
Right.
open the fridge, eat a sandwich, if
Yeah.
you're not going to cook. But like you're so like I love that because that's a lot of the modern teachings and a lot of the modern realizations for pastors is to honor that Sabbath, because for so long it was like go go go, work work work.
Yeah. And I
But
don't
we
think that honors God, man. We're so busy doing everything.
Yeah.
That we just, I don't know. It just doesn't make any sense. And then you get in, entertainment industry, hip hop culture, and there's 24/7 grind and no sleep and sleep when you're dead. And like, no, you're probably gonna
Mhm.
die early because of that. Like just like that. There's nothing biblical about that phraseology. So like, what do we do to honor God in our rest? And that's something that I wish was talked about better. That I wasn't trying to retrofit into my life now.
Right.
And I need to do an even better job of it, because while I'm talking about it and it's at the forefront of my mind, I still have a long way to go.
Right.
Um, so yeah, that's a big thing I wish seminaries did and prioritize it.
Absolutely.
And I wish churches prioritized it. Like,
Yeah.
um, I know some churches do really well with like, here's 2 days off, and here's a down, and that's great. But I wonder, I'm curious about how many churches teach employees of the church how to Sabbath well.
Right.
And for most of us, it's just a day off to not clock into work, but that's not a Sabbath either. So what does it look like? That's the journey I'm on right now that I was just taught.
Mm, mm. I like that, man. I like that. It's powerful. I think that's gonna impact me in this next season of life. I really do.
Yeah, same, same,
All
same,
right.
same.
On that note, so think about yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Think about the 18, 19, 20-year-old young man.
Mm-hmm.
Or think about the newly saved you before you even
Mm-hmm.
stepped into ministry.
Mm-hmm.
And I say this in context of, I know we can't go back in time and talk to our old self, but there's someone out there that might be listening right now who is in those shoes that you were in 10,
Mm-hmm.
15, 20 years ago. Give yourself something profound, some kind of statement that you could share to help get them from the point they're at moving forward, knowing that they're coming to a place where you sit right now, where you or I sit right now. Something
Yeah,
profound, something to grab onto, some hope, or Jesus is our hope. But what about Jesus? What about this this journey they're about to embark on to keep them motivated?
yeah. I think I've got a couple things, but the same short answer is learn Sabbath now at 18,
Mm-hmm.
19, 20. My pastor said something that's profound, and I would say learn learn resting now so that you can uh, work from your rest and not rest from your work.
That's good.
Because nobody's teaching how to do that. So I would just say, make that a rhythm of your life. And however hard the countercultural it is, just do it, get to it early. That's one. The second thing I would say, man, is like, know your triggers, deal with your trauma, and draw your boundaries.
Yeah.
You know, like, no, this is the thing that sends you over the edge. This is the thing that still hurts. And these are the boundaries you need to draw while you deal with it and heal from it. Um, whatever it is. It doesn't have to be deep, or maybe it's not uber traumatic. Maybe it's just a quirk, but like, find those things that are the subtle things that could cause you to make a bad decision, have a bad thought, or maybe off in your theology.
Right.
And just learn what those boundaries need to be. Like, because of this, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to be involved in this type of ministry. I'm not going to go over here. I'm not going to have these type of relationships. And be okay with being legalistic about it. You know what I mean? Like, not on some old legalistic theology stuff, but on some
Right.
like rigid, like, I don't need to go
This
here because of this. Yeah, this is my line. And that's just the way of honoring God with your discipline. Like, find those things, get wisdom about those things, and don't be ashamed of those things. Just deal with it. Because the sooner you can deal with that, the better. I did a very good job early on of, I don't need to listen to this, I don't need to watch that, because this is what my mind goes because of these addictions I had, and pornography and this other stuff. So I need to really cut all this out of my life. I don't need to watch this scene in the movie. It adds nothing to the value of the film.
Right.
And I'm going to cover my eyes or walk out of the theater because I don't want to see this ever again in my life. What I didn't do good with was dealing with the trauma from my father, and I just started counseling in March 2020, and it's been transformative for me, like professional therapy. I wish I'd have done it 20 years ago. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I would have been better equipped to deal with some insecurities that I may have spilled onto my children that I'm praying about every day. So, like, my prayer is that, know that stuff early, deal with it early. The Bible is the answer for everything. And sometimes that answer leads you to some of the people that have wisdom and counseling and mental health stuff. So go deal with it. That's not anti your faith. And if you can't, look for resources and get people in your life that can. So yeah, those are two things that really come to mind, man. Honestly, there's all the obvious things about, you know what I mean, the word and the life you live and living up the righteousness and holiness, but those are the two things that I wish those things were in place, and for whatever reason obvious for me. These are the things that were not, that I wish I'd have learned better.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, it's, and it's everything like this. I love this question when I get to this point because it's so wide open. Like I've heard, and the goal is for me as I'm growing through my pastorate and being a pastor and growing through my ministry to learn from people who have been doing it longer than me and who have experienced things greater than I've experienced. Like, what do I have? I have a year and a half of pastoral ministry to lean on. That's not a lot in the grand scheme of things. But for somebody who has zero, I could help. Somebody like me
100%.
who has the little bit of time I have, somebody like you with 10 years in, and some of the other people I've had on the show, it helps tremendously as I grow, so it's ministering to me. Bro. It's ministering to me while we minister to others.
For sure, man. And like you said, man, I get some old friends. Yeah. Some old friends who all they want to do is just give you what they got.
Right.
And take them out, treat them to some food as often as you can, and listen.
Absolutely.
Old wise friends, not just old age, because some old people are wise. Get some old wise friends who know how to help you in marriage and life and ministry and all those things, man. And just listen, bro.
All right. As we come to a close, any last statements, final thoughts, anything you'd like to share?
Dude, I feel pretty full. I feel like we had a great convo.
Absolutely.
I could talk about some stuff I have coming up, if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Please.
Yeah, sweet. So the Legend podcast is up. We're about to launch season 4 in about a month. So if you just look up the Legend podcast, wherever you are, we do conversations about, culture, faith, and just how God is working in us personally, telling our stories. And we just have a fun time. It's a fun podcast. So that's coming. That's out. I'm about to drop. This will probably maybe out by the time you put this out. I'm not sure, but I'm about to put out a deluxe version of my EP. God is Iconic, and that'll be out September. And that'll have a few new songs on it, so that's fun. But follow me on all the things. Yeah, man. I'll give you an early listen, bro. Like, let me know.
All right.
And so follow me on all the things for that. All my socials are at Legin TV, LEGIN TV, and website's legend.tv. And lots of sermons and content on my YouTube page. So just a bunch of stuff coming. So
Awesome, man. Awesome. Hey, right now, my I guess in this season I'm going through, still fighting some of the health stuff and dealing with issues with my feet, with diabetes and all that kind of stuff. But
wow.
the song that's really, and of course, the launching a small church in a rural community where there's a lot of stuff going on and a lot of small town stuff going on. Like the song "Deliver Me," your song "Deliver Me" has been the song of my season. That little hook, that little hook's got me, man. Like my kids sing it. My kids walk through the house singing it, man. And it's like, oh man, but yeah,
Thank you, bro.
everybody
Eric
out there.
might have
Look,
made that beat actually.
oh really? Wow.
Yeah, he killed it.
His music got me through an early season of my Christian walk before I even considered ministry, when I was just serving as a lay minister and going through the sanctification process, man. One of his albums really ministered to me a lot in a season. So that makes a lot of sense, man. Hey, if you haven't checked out my friend, Legin, Christian hip hop artist, motivational speaker, all around great guy, family man, devoted to the Lord. Go check him out wherever you listen to music, wherever you check out podcasts. He's on Facebook, YouTube. You're probably on X, Instagram, Spotify, I'm a Spotify guy, so I do everything on Spotify and YouTube. So
same.
Check them out, man. Thank you for your time today, man. I really appreciate, like I said earlier, time is one of our most valuable resources, and I honor and respect the fact that you spent some time with me today to have a conversation. I look forward to future correspondence with you. Maybe if you're in Louisiana, if you ever get any gigs or shows or anything in Louisiana,
I would love that.
Let me know, and maybe we can spend some time, catch up if you have time, grab a meal or something.
I love that, bro.
Cup of coffee, whatever, just hang out. I can introduce you to some Cajun culture, real Cajun culture while you're here.
I would love that.
Everybody out there, thanks for listening. We appreciate your time today. I pray that the Lord richly blesses you through this conversation, and may the rest of your day, week, month, year be blessed by the Lord. May you continue to grow in the Lord. May you continue to be sanctified in the Lord. May you continue to chase after his glory, his holiness, his goodness, and leave the things of the world behind. Chase after the cross, and let the blood of Jesus pour out upon your life. In Jesus' name, amen. Thanks again.
Amen.
We'll catch you next time. Y'all have a wonderful day.
We appreciate you checking us out. Make sure to like, subscribe, and share. Stay tuned for more content, and don't hesitate to comment or leave any questions. We will see you next time on the Reformationist Podcast. Take care, and God bless.